Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. It's time to jump back on that horror monster train for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition after an extended vacation. So let's jump right into it. Alright, let's cover a couple of minions that I still owe you for a horror-themed antagonist that I have covered previously, the Groom, which is basically a riff off of Frankenstein's monster. However, he's not the first construct of this sort that was made. That would be the Relict, who is female. The Relict wanted to have a life partner, and thus created the Groom to do so. However, she didn't do it quite right, and now the two golems loathe one another and are constantly clashing, and it is the grass that suffers, i.e. adventurers and normal NPCs, whenever they come to blows. The Groom himself covers a couple of different horror subgenres, and this extends to his minions, those being scientific horror, gothic horror, a little bit of body horror, and definitely some cosmic horror. And now we're drifting into that cosmic horror realm for the last few minions. So let's go ahead and cover a couple of cultists today. The Nepenthe cultists that gather to the Groom all partake of the sap of the Nepenthe plant, which is a monster that we covered previously. And the longer that they drink it, they have a better chance to either just outright die or transform into something other than human. Now, there are certain personalities that are attracted to the Groom. It's basically those that are dispossessed, lost, and perhaps a little bit suicidal. But once in their orbit, they become enchanted by this beautiful golem that can really never love them back. But they do whatever they can to further his aims and gather that love that will never exist, which usually means bringing oblivion to everyone else. All right, enough preamble. Let's go ahead and talk about a Nepenthe Liminate. If a cult exists for just a couple of months, inevitably it's going to spawn a couple of Limites. These are folks whose connection to oblivion itself has become very strong, and they're no longer strictly human or mortal anymore. On top of now a completely blackened face and mirror-like eyes, their outline is always traced with this strange black light that never really changes no matter what angle that you're looking at them at. With focus, this abyssal contour that they have will explode from them and give everyone around them a taste of the end of all things. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the Nepenthe Liminate's statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A Nepenthe Liminate is a challenge rating 5 medium humanoid who is chaotic evil. They wear scale mail, they have some saving throw bonuses, they have damage resistance to cold, poison, and psychic, and they're immune to the frightened and poison conditions. They do share some abilities of lesser cult members, such as Thoughtless, so they have advantage on saving throws against enchantment spells and charm effects. And they do have Wisp of Oblivion, so once per long rest, they can basically Misty Step, except all of the creatures around where they land have to make a save or be stunned until the end of their next turn. They do have multi-attack with Longsword and Heavy Crossbow, but they also have Annihilation Burst, which is basically that outline explodes from them in an AoE. All other creatures have to succeed on a Wisdom saving throw or take cold damage and psychic damage. And they also have a reaction of Greater Entropic Strike. I say Smite because it's very similar to a Paladin Smite, except that it does cold and psychic damage. Now, what could be worse than a Nepenthe Liminate? Well, that'd be a Nepenthe Bliss, which are the only cultists the Groom seems to actually care about. So this final state is what all cultists do wish to attain, but very few ever reach. This is because the Nepenthe cult has a high rate of self-destruction because of their poisonous rites that they do, and the fact that they actively seek oblivion whenever they're trying to serve the Groom's needs. They don't really have that self-preservation instinct. So Bliss are thankfully rare. Bliss is also no longer a humanoid, it's just kind of a shard of oblivion itself. Their face is a black cavity with glassy, unblinking eyes, and the rest of their body is monochrome and gray, which really you can only see the semi-substantial spiked plate mail that they have been gifted by the Groom that they wear. However, whenever they rupture, the horror's true nature rolls out, which is a shard of the cold, life-snuffing gap between the spheres. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the Nepenthe Bliss's statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Nepenthe Bliss is a challenge rating 7 medium aberration that is chaotic evil. They do wear plate mail, they have saving throw bonuses, they're resistant to bludgeoning, poison, and psychic damage, as well as immune to cold damage. and the frightened and poisoned conditions. They have Empty Mirror, which is an upgrade to the previous ability I talked about with the liniment, whereas they get a bonus against charm and enchantment effects. However, if they succeed, the person that casts or uses that effect has to make a save against the same ability as if the Bliss cast it, which functions the same as the version mentioned in the previous monster, including being able to be used once per long rest. They do have multi-attack with longsword and a crossbow, as well as Annihilation Burst, which just does a little more damage than the previous monster. Their big scary ability is Fog of Eradication, which is basically gaseous form on the Bliss's side of things, except that gas is a roiling, boiling cloud of oblivion itself. Thus, creatures that enter that for the first time or begin their turn within the cloud have to make a wisdom save, or they take cold and psychic damage, and are afflicted with the confusion spell, so they can get really nasty really quick. On top of that, there's an unnatural gravity that comes from the fog itself that pulls creatures to it unless they make a strength save. So you can just get pulled right into it even if you try to get away, get confused, and start taking damage every round until you unfortunately pass. When this ends, the Bliss can reform in any area that was covered by the cloud previously, as long as it's unoccupied. And they also have Greater Entropic Strike like the previous monster, which again is just Smite that does some cold and psychic damage. I hope that you enjoyed these advanced cultists as much as I did designing them. Just going down that nice Cosmic Horror Oblivion track was nice. You can find them, along with the rest of the minions for the Groom himself, and hundreds more horror-themed monsters, all for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They're all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're more interested in the non-Dungeons & Dragons horror role-playing projects that I have, or the horror fiction that I write, that includes Grease Paint right here. It's got a killer clown. Book 2 will be out later this summer. Keep an eye out. Or you can head over to www.zacharyoshay.com. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention, and have a wonderful rest of the day.